From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. First, the headlines. President Biden, VP Harris played Thanksgiving meals at D.C. Central Kitchen. Kevin Strickland, wrongfully convicted of triple murder, freed after 43 years in prison. Malikah Shabazz, daughter of Malcolm X, found dead in Brooklyn. Remains of first Islamic madrasa found in Turkey's Harran. European think tank adds U.S. to list of backsliding democracies. Our top story tonight. U.S. President Joe Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff helped assemble Thanksgiving meal kits at the D.C. Central Kitchen in Washington, D.C. this week. While most of America will gather this Thursday for a turkey meal, the Smithsonian says the myths of Thanksgiving, however, are questioned by historians. The magazine says some Native Americans observe Thanksgiving as a national day of mourning, an annual commemoration that began in 1970. These ceremonies are held in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They mark the day 400 years ago that led to Native Americans' colonization, forced conversion to Christianity, cultural genocide, and servitude. All three defendants who participated in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery were convicted of murder Wednesday afternoon. A Georgia jury of 11 white and 1 African-American individuals found Gregory McMichael, Travis McMichael, and William Bryan Jr. guilty of murdering Arbery. Arbery was an African-American man killed on February 23, 2020, after being chased through the Satilla Shores neighborhood just outside Brunswick, Georgia. Travis McMichael, who fired the fatal gunshot blasts, claimed he acted in self-defense. His father, Greg McMichael, a former investigator for the local district attorney's office, and their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, were arrested more than 2 months following the killing. This was only after national outrage sparked from a graphic leaked video of the shooting forced authorities to do so. Kevin Strickland, an African-American man convicted by an all-white jury in a 1978 triple murder in Kansas City, had his conviction set aside yesterday. Strickland had always maintained his innocence throughout over 4 decades of imprisonment. He was found guilty even though no physical evidence linked him to the crime scene and family members provided alibis. The case was built on the testimony of Cynthia Douglas. She was an eyewitness who later attempted to recant her testimony because she said she was pressured by police. Though Strickland was innocent, he will not receive a dime from Missouri, which has strict compensation laws for wrongful convictions. Tricia Arroyo Bushnell, Strickland's attorney and executive director of the Midwest Innocence Project, said his case was a great example of how much a system cares about finality over fairness. The U.S. House Committee investigating the January 6 Capitol attack issued subpoenas Tuesday to 3 militia or paramilitary groups. Investigators believe they have information about the deadly siege. Subpoenas were issued to Proud Boys International, the Oath Keepers, and the First Amendment Praetorian, along with their respective top officials. It came a day after the panel subpoenaed political operative Roger Stone Jr., conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and 3 others. Committee Chairman Benny Thompson said the panel is seeking information from individuals and groups reportedly involved in planning the attack. It said members of Proud Boys International called for violence before January 6th. The Justice Department has indicted 34 people affiliated with the Proud Boys and 18 members of the Oath Keepers. A jury on Tuesday awarded more than $25 million in civil damages to victims of a deadly far-right rally in August 2017. The jury in Charlottesville, Virginia, decided organizers of the Unite the Right rally violated the state's conspiracy laws. The panel agreed on 3 of the 6 counts. It could not reach agreement on 3 other counts involving federal laws. The 24 defendants and organizations helped bring together hundreds of neo-Nazis, anti-Semites, and white nationalists to a park in Charlottesville. That's where the city planned to remove a statue of Confederate War General Robert E. Lee. Fights broke out between rally-goers and counter-demonstrators. An admirer of Adolf Hitler drove a car into the crowd, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injuring 19 others. The driver, James Fields Jr. of Ohio, was ordered to pay $12 million in civil damages. He is currently serving a life sentence. Malikah Shabazz, one of the youngest daughters of Malcolm X and his wife Betty Shabazz, was found dead at a Brooklyn home on Monday. Police said Shabazz was found unresponsive on her living room floor by her 23-year-old daughter who lives with her. She was 56. Police do not suspect foul play as her death did not appear to be suspicious, a spokeswoman for the city medical examiner said. A high-ranking police official said accidental food poisoning may have played a role. Shabazz's death comes 4 days after a judge exonerated 2 men who were convicted in 1966 of assassinating her father the previous year. The remains of one of 5 Islamic schools or madrasas included in the notes of historical travelers have been found in the ancient city of Harran, Turkey. The city was once a scientific center and home to more than 300 scientists. The ruins of the 12th century madrasa were discovered in southeast Turkey. That is one of the oldest settlements on the UNESCO World Heritage Tentative List, according to the lead archaeologist. Anadolu news agency reports that excavation work has been ongoing for 8 years in the Harran settlement in Sanliurfa province. Harran is a one-time Assyrian and Umayyad capital located 27 miles southeast of Sanliurfa near the Syrian border. It was a key Mesopotamian trade center on a road running south to Nineveh in modern Iraq. It has been continuously inhabited since 6000 BC. As the European Union expresses concern about worker shortages, it is allowing Poland to stop refugees from entering the continent. Many EU countries are racing to recruit, train, and integrate foreigners. Some wealthy nations are fast-tracking visas and promising permanent residency to skilled immigrants. In Germany, officials recently warned the country needs 400,000 new immigrants a year to fill jobs in fields ranging from academia to air conditioning. A new Immigration Act offers accelerated work visas and 6 months to visit and find a job. Meanwhile, Canada plans to grant residency to 1.2 million new immigrants by 2023. In Australia, mines, hospitals, and pubs are short-handed. After nearly 2 years with a closed border, the government intends to roughly double the number of immigrants it allows in over the next year. Human rights activists are opposed to 2 candidates vying to lead Interpol. The 89th Interpol General Assembly began in Istanbul on Tuesday. The international organization facilitates worldwide police cooperation and crime control. Major General Ahmed Naser al-Raisi of the United Arab Emirates and Hu Bin-Chen of China are among 3 candidates in the running for the presidency. 2 British men formerly imprisoned in the UAE have accused al-Raisi of torture and filed legal complaints against him in the UK, France, Sweden, and Norway, according to The Guardian. Al-Raisi is the Inspector General at the UAE's Interior Ministry. He said he wants to modernize and transform Interpol. A coalition of 19 organizations has also written a letter condemning the UAE's poor human rights record, including systematic use of torture and ill treatment at state security facilities. For the first time, the United States has been included in an annual list of backsliding democracies, the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance said. The Stockholm-based intergovernmental organization noted in its report published on Monday a visible deterioration that began in 2019. Former President Donald Trump questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 election results was a historic turning point, the document noted. A campaign by Trump and his allies to overturn last year's election results culminated in his supporters storming the Capitol on January 6th. The report is also highly critical of India, which is backsliding with the most democratic violations. These include harassment, arrests, and prosecution of human rights defenders, activists, journalists, and others critical of the government. The Indian government's excessive use of force in implementing COVID-19 rules, harassment against Muslim minorities, internet crackdowns, and lockdowns, particularly in Kashmir, were noted in the report. A worldwide Amber Alert has been issued through the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children for a baby who disappeared during the U.S. airlift of evacuees from Afghanistan last August. Mirza Ali Ahmadi and his wife Suraya found themselves and their 5 children amid a chaotic crowd outside the gates of Kabul International Airport on August 19th. Fearful that their 2-month-old son Suhail would be crushed, they handed their baby to a U.S. soldier over a tall fence. With the Taliban pushing back hundreds of evacuees amid U.S. troop withdrawal, it took Ahmadi's family more than half an hour to reach the other side of the airport fence. But Suhail was nowhere to be found, said Ahmadi, who worked as a security guard at the U.S. Embassy for 10 years. The couple and their 4 other children were evacuated to Qatar and then to Germany, eventually landing in the United States. They are now at Fort Bliss in Texas with other Afghan refugees waiting to be resettled. An Afghan refugee support group and U.S. government agencies, including the State Department, are on the lookout for Suhail. The popularity of Islamic banking is growing among residents of the United Arab Emirates. According to an annual survey released Sunday by Emirates Islamic Bank, the system was almost as popular as conventional banking this year. 61% of UAE residents said they use conventional banking products compared to 60% who use Islamic banking. Overall, Islamic banking has been growing in popularity in the country, up from 47% in 2015. In contrast, conventional banking has been on a downward trend during the same period, falling from 70%. Islamic banking products such as auto finance and savings accounts are more popular, while personal finance products are equally popular for both segments of the banking industry. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the history and story behind Thanksgiving, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. America is heading towards Thanksgiving. Will turkey be on the table, or there will be history? We have been conflicted about history, statues, what need to be taught, what need to be in the classroom. But we have someone who has grown up reading and writing and enjoying history. Please welcome Dave Kindi.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me today.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV. So tell me, when you were growing up, what were they teaching you in school about the savage Indians being cornered, or what were you learning about Thanksgiving?
Oh, we did. They didn't go too much about the savages back then. However, I did learn that from watching 1950s and 1960s cowboy movies on television, and we got a rather distorted view of it. However, when I was a child, what they were teaching us about Thanksgiving was pilgrims with belt buckles on their hats, and Native Americans with these big full headdresses, and everybody sitting down around a big table and then big smiles and having Thanksgiving turkey. And the reality is what we were taught in grade school as children is quite a bit different than the real truth about the holiday.
You have written in the Smithsonian magazine, which is because of its history and the institution is pretty authoritative. Tell us that how is a couple of lines about Thanksgiving grew up to be such a major myth and a holiday?
It's really quite interesting. It follows several different paths. The tradition of the original Thanksgiving, what we call the first Thanksgiving in 1621 and here in Plymouth, was actually a harvest feast, which probably happened in late September or early October, not in November like we have it here today, like we celebrate today. The Pilgrims were very appreciative of the bounty that they had after a terrible winter. They had been decimated with illness. They lost half of the settlers from sickness, but their crops were good that summer. And they were very happy with that, and they wanted to celebrate which was a common tradition in England, and also among the Wampanoag Indians, that the Native Americans that lived here, celebrating the harvest was also a very popular event. So it was something that many cultures do across time to be thankful for the bounty that they have at a given time, because the weather and conditions can be so unpredictable. It kind of got a little twisted following down the line. What happened was they did it for 1 year. It was not repeated. There was a Thanksgiving that the Pilgrims did a couple of years later, but that was because of a spring event where they had a drought and had very little rain, and all of a sudden they got rain in the summer, and it saved all their crops. So they were very thankful for that. And somehow the two kind of got mixed up and confused over the course of time. And a lot of the images that we have today about Thanksgiving come from our Victorian era here in the United States, and kind of like a little bit of an unusual look at how things actually happened back then.
So you mentioned that historically, only one person has mentioned in 2-3 lines about that event 400 years ago today. Then how the rest of the history has been built around it? I mean, in your article, you talk about the other people, and you also talk about what Native people thought about it, how their thinking of the 400 years came to us.
It's rather interesting. In New England, there was a tradition around the 18th century into the 1700s where some people celebrated like they perceived the pilgrims did. And that tradition kind of kept going on. There was a woman, and I've forgotten her name at the top of my head, but she pushed for years to get the United States government to recognize Thanksgiving as a holiday. This is back in the 19th century. And Abraham Lincoln eventually did do so. He did recognize it as a holiday in November, which also happened about the same time as the Gettysburg Address, which was in November too. So things kind of snowballed from there, and it really kind of got confused. It all happens about the time that in a very young United States, when people are trying to come up with a foundation ideology, if you will. How did things get started here? And they turned to Plymouth, Massachusetts, because that was the first surviving colony, English colony. And it sort of grew from there. One of the things that we don't know an awful lot. Edward Winslow wrote the like a very short paragraph about this celebration, this harvest feast that they had, and that's really all we have to go on. William Bradford, the governor, also wrote about the bounty of that fall, but not specifically mentioning the harvest feast. But he does mention wild turkeys in his account. Which is interesting because that's the only reference that we have to the fact that turkey might have been served at the first Thanksgiving or the first feast in 1621.
Now, you mentioned in 1970, Native people started observing Thanksgiving as a day of mourning. Who started that, and was there a big discussion, or one person started it and gradually it was caught on?
It started in 1970 when they were having a 350th observation of the Pilgrims landing in 1620. And they had invited one of the local Wampanoag representatives to come down and speak. And he had prepared a whole speech talking about what Thanksgiving meant to his people, and it was not the glorified speech of the Pilgrim myth that the people wanted to hear. So they censored him, And I apologize, I've forgotten his name at the moment, but what he ended up doing was, in protest, was going to another location in Plymouth and basically standing up and reading his speech, which talks about the genocide, that talks about the colonization, that talks about the effects of Christianity, the effects of cultural destruction on the Wampanoag people and the Native American peoples in across America, from resulting from what the Thanksgiving is. They point out, a lot of the Wampanoag people today point out, we don't have any bones with against the Pilgrims. They were generally fair with us, and we were generally fair with them. It's what it came to represent afterwards, because none of them knew what was coming next. But the fact is that the English continued and the Europeans continued settlement of the country and displaced a lot of Native Americans and took their lands.
A question about historiography, Dave. You mentioned that pretty soon 90% of the tribes were wiped out because of the diseases. Who was counting people at that time?
It's only rough guesses by the historians and by the people who Wampanoag people today who keep the history of their tribe. It's not known. We've seen estimates as many as 30,000 people to as many as 100,000 people at that time, and the Wampanoag stretched from Maine down to Cape Cod and onto Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and into what are parts of Rhode Island today. And it was a little bit different than, it was a kind of a confederation, if you will. Each community was sort of like a separate entity unto itself, but they paid homage to one chief who was, in this case, Massasoit or Wemessican, who lived in Pokanoket, which is located in Bristol, Rhode Island today. And there was like 70 different communities. So it was like 70 different groups of Wampanoags that were combined into this one group. In about 1616, because the Native Americans had no immunities to European diseases, the illnesses started to spread through the Wampanoag people. It only initially impacted the coastline. So pretty much only the Wampanoag were hit from 1616 to 1619. And they lost, there were some horrible deaths from, illnesses that you or I today would survive because of vaccinations or because of, natural immunities that we've built up over the years. And, smallpox and other diseases of the such. And it wiped out, as they estimate, as many as 90% of the population of Wampanoag. And this is the interesting thing about why the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims came together, was because the Pilgrims were only a small group. They started out with about 100 people. By the end of the first winter, they were down to 50 because of illness. The Wampanoag had seen their numbers decreased dramatically, as I said, down by 90%, and both were in a weakened position and needed help from somebody to be able to survive. So it was really providential that the Pilgrims landed here in Plymouth where they did, because if they had landed anywhere else, they probably would have been met with a firmer resistance. In this case, the Wampanoag, who are generally a peaceful people, recognizing that the English had some power, were willing to sign a defense treaty with them. It was a mutual defense treaty. If either one would be attacked, then they would be supported by the other. And in the case of the Wampanoags, they were concerned about Narragansett tribe, which had not been decimated by the illnesses that the Wampanoag had been hit with, and were very much stronger, and they were sort of natural enemies. They were always at kind of like fighting amongst each other. So they needed help to fend off that incursion.
Well, Dave, one of the myths which you can further explore is that in Muslim community in America, it is known that one of the persons signing on behalf of the native people, his name was Mustafa, which is the name of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him also. So I don't know how history continues to evolve on these issues, but what is the state of what is being taught at the school level? Is it subject to the debate and fights?
That I have not heard about. Mostly they deal with the relationship right now between the Wampanoag and the Pilgrim community. But that's a new one for me, and I'm going to have to explore that and find out more about it because I was not aware of it. Likely, if he was a Muslim, he probably kept quiet about it because the Pilgrims, even though they believed in religious freedom, they believed in religious freedom for themselves, not necessarily for others.
Well, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Don't eat too much. I probably will.
Okay. Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. As we gather with our families, please enjoy your food thoughtfully. Please pray for those still struggling. And please be careful as you gather and celebrate as COVID-19 cases are rising again. Happy Thanksgiving. Salam and good night.